Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining me and Alex in our presentation titled Building an Equitable ESL Non-Credit / Multilingual Program, a conversation as part of our title. Alex and I are so thankful for your time, and our goal here is to share our experiences building our fledgling multilingual program at our institution at Crafton Hills College. We will begin by providing an overview of the program, including its exigence, the purpose, and then the setup. We will then move on and talk a little bit about, how we are learning and figuring things out as we go along, and share some of our challenges and some triumphs as well. Lastly, we are very aware that we are a brand new program, and we don't want to offer this as a blueprint for best practices. Instead, we're inviting conversations about, the realities of the journey of building such program. I also want to say that I know we will be talking a lot about different aspects, including the more pragmatic and the more ideological and even the institutional stuff that we have encountered. But I think at the heart of this presentation is our desire to support our students and to make sure that we honor their linguistic and cultural identities. Like I said, we imagined this to be a conversation, and there's so many moving pieces. So feel free to chime in and chat with us as we go along. And Alex is going to continue to talk a little bit more about the housekeeping stuff as well.
Yes. So as Chloe said, we have a summary of the points that we hope to cover in this presentation. Along the presentation, you might see our college mascot. His name is Riker. When you see Riker, that might be an opportunity for us to hear from you, because remember, a conversation is two ways. Also, if you feel that we're going too quick, or if you have any questions during the presentation, feel free to, we were going to say unmute yourself, but I don't think we can't, but you can raise your hand. I can try to unmute you, or you can just type your comments or questions on the chat. So with that out of the way, we're going to officially start with some introductions. Chloe.
Thank you. So we thought we'd start by introducing ourselves and sharing why this program is important to both of us. So my name is Chloe de los Reyes. My family moved from the Philippines to California when I was 12. And as you can imagine, this was such a significant moment in my life. I spoke English because English was widely spoken in the Philippines. We were colonized by the United States for a couple hundred years. And however, when I arrived in the United States, I remember vividly folks pointing out my accent or the funny ways I used English. And it always made me feel so bad, right? So at a young age, I became acutely aware that language is currency in America, and I needed to pay extra attention to it. And in fact, this is how I became interested in my current discipline, which is composition studies. And at first, my motivation for going into comp studies was because I wanted to fix myself and my English. But over time, I slowly started to realize the deep connections among language, identity, culture, and of course, power, which is something that Sun just talked quite a bit today. I realized how important it is for people to think differently about language, and most importantly, to understand that difference is not deficiency. And in other words, I know later on in my life, I came to realize that there was nothing wrong with me. And that's sort of how I became a multilingual or / writing teacher. I'm really interested in the ways we can work with students that begin by valuing what they bring with them into the classroom and honoring their linguistic and cultural and other identities and heritages. I also want to say that this is such a struggle for me, especially as a language instructor and a writing instructor, because I realize I'm very much part of the quote unquote system, but I do hope that I can do things differently, and I'm constantly striving towards being better. Your turn, Alex.
Thank you. Hola, my name is Alex. My full name is Heber Alexander Jaco Menendez, but as many of us, I have a preferred name, which is Alex. I migrated from El Salvador when I was 17. Spanish is my first language. Why this program is important to me? Well, as a multilingual student myself, I can relate to many of the students who enter into our programs or our systems. I know the power that language has and how it can be used for good or evil and how it can raise or put down a person. I'm also an advocate of being proud of who you are, right? I used to hate my accent. I used to find ways to either improve my pronunciation or just not talk so that I don't show my accent. Working in this environment opened my eyes to the reality, right? It's an advantage to know more than one language. So this is what motivates me to continue this work. Now, we're going to talk about our program in particular and how it came through. We want to give you some background information. On this slide, I want to highlight three important aspects that help us build this. The first one is the partnership with adult education. My role in the college is a transition counselor. I work primarily with the local adult schools in the city of Reyes and Jucaipa in San Bernardino County. So we noticed that for many students who finish the ESL advanced level at the local adult schools, there were many that there weren't many options on how to continue their education. Most of the times, if they finish the advanced level of ESL, students were transitioning into high school diploma or high school equivalency, which is a GED or high set preparation. We realized that many of our students, they have higher degrees back in their country, and they don't really need to retake the high school diploma or equivalency to continue improving or developing their language. So our program opens the door for those students to continue into higher education without the need to retaking classes that they already have. Also open a door for a better transition between the adult education system and the community college system, which later on we're going to talk about the differences in terms of expectations and services. We also realized about the huge community need. We have a growing and diverse population, and many of those households are primarily bilingual or non-native English speakers. As inflation grows, right? We are always looking for ways to improve our quality of life. So many times, even if you have a secure job, you want to move forward or improve your opportunity to get, better salaries. And that means going back to school or getting trained. So that's another need that our community is showing, right? Many students who have been out of school, they try to come back and maybe improve their language just to move up on the ladder. And we were thinking on how we can better serve this community. So community colleges offer credit courses and non-credit courses. We opted to use non-credit because most of our demographic might have different legal status. So non-credit, we don't care about the legal status. We don't care about social security numbers. Those classes don't have a fee attached to it. The college campus have matriculation fees, parking permit fees, but there are ways to help students with those additional fees. Non-credit also opens the door for students to retake a level if they find that they need more preparation or they're not quite ready to move on. We're going to talk later on about our self-guided placement. And also, for many students who are interested in continue into the credit-bearing courses, non-credit allows them to try how to be a successful college student by teaching them how to use our interfaces like Canvas, their student email, and how to register and drop for their own classes. Chloe.
Thank you. So as you may probably have observed, Alex and I occupy different roles. Alex is our CAPE counselor, whereas I'm an English faculty English instructor. So I will be approaching this from that particular angle. So thank you for the setup, Alex. So I really came into this work with things somewhat already. I don't want to call it in place yet, but things have started to move. I think Alex, prior to my to my uh, to my being hired at Crafton Hills, I think there have been multiple attempts to begin a multilingual program. However, I think lots of different converging events really come into play. The first one is, if you may remember, the reforms dictated by AB 705 has really made our campus, in particular English department, aware of certain gaps in our course offerings. Many English courses, many English instructors have voiced some concerns that we have a student demographic who need additional support, yet we don't have courses or anything in place yet to make that happen. And then shortly after, we have identified this need, we heard from Alex's side, especially particularly Yucaipa and Redlands Adult Schools, that they wanted to once again try to make a bridge between their classes and Crafton Hills College. So these two converging events then led to a formation of a task force, mostly made up of English faculty, to move forward with a charge of exploring the possibility of programs/structures that will serve the differing perspectives, educational experiences, and written voices of our multilingual students. We realized as a group and as a task force that widening our current structures is really important, because as a second language scholar, I don't know, many of you are familiar with Paul K. Matsuda, talks about the idea of the myth of linguistic homogeneity. And he argues that the need for instructors, and by extension, the larger higher education academia as a whole, to acknowledge the reality that classrooms are actually filled with students who speak languages other than English, right? Especially in California, we're such a diverse linguistic place that it is only, I think, common sense to imagine our classrooms to be filled with many, many languages being spoken. So Matsuda's assertion is also further supported by research on multilingual individuals at both the national and at the local levels. So, since then, it's been a few years, the task force has then expanded, and we've had representations from various units on campus. And we continue to do this work and to try to figure out how we can better serve our multilingual students in particular. Your turn.
Perfect. And here we just want to show you an overview of the ideal pathway that we have built in collaboration with the adult. The first 3 courses on the ESL classes are offered at the local adult schools. At this point, the students learn the basics of English, right? They know how to say mom, dad, they know how to form basic sentences, how to fill out a basic application. But the need comes after the advanced level, where they might be able to maybe write a couple of sentences, communicate, follow instruction, but they might need that additional kick to transition to higher education, or maybe move up in their job. So we built 4 different levels, level 1 to level 4, with the idea that students already completed the basic levels at the adult school, or if we have some students who come into our program without previous experience in adult school, they are able to follow instructions. Our partnership is built on trust. So if we find students in our program at the college who might need that basic skill, we can always refer them back to the adult school so that they build on those. If they feel comfortable, they can even take 2 classes at the same time. The idea with our program is that by taking level 3 and level 4, students have open pathway to enter into the workforce or any short certificate that is going to prepare them to a career, or they can continue into trade very important. We have had some successes in students taking English 101 or freshman composition and have been very successful.
Okay, so thank you. So, as I mentioned earlier, the task force, the task force came into somewhat an existing program with 4 different levels that Alex just briefly described. But also one of the things that we were really adamant about was how do we reframe the conversations around how we talk about our quote unquote ESL students, and also reconstruct the ways students are being seen by not only other people, but by themselves as well, right? So one of the first places that we thought we could start reframing the conversation and raise awareness of linguistic diversity and eventually move into justice is through terminology. My background is in composition studies, so that's where a lot of my theoretical underpinnings are. So the Conference on College Composition and Communication endorses the term multilingual to describe those individuals who speak languages other than English and who are often referred to by other terms such as English as a second language, English language learners, second language learners, and many other such descriptors. Historically, individuals who fall within this population have been referred to as ESL, or English as a second language. However, many scholars and researchers have really moved away from using ESL descriptor because it doesn't accurately reflect the characteristics of this population. For instance, as many of you may know, some students may be learning English as a third, a fourth, a fifth language, while others may have learned English at school but speak another language at home. In fact, I didn't come to this realization because I've been labeled ESL all my life that I actually speak more than 2 languages. I speak another one, but I was so focused on the second and the 2 that I think it reduced my sort of understanding of the different languages that I can draw from. At any rate, the range in experiences and characteristics of those within this group vary greatly, so much so that a multilingual scholar, Gail Schacht, notes that no single label that has been used to describe this quote-unquote population can encompass all of the students that we're talking about. And I guess this is a part where I go, terminology is critical as it can construct as well as reflect our views. And this in turn can shape the programs that we create and the experiences of our students. For us to counter the stigma, we decided to start integrating or embedding the term multilingual throughout our work. But we also are facing this challenge that multilingual may not be, since ESL is so codified into everything, that we needed to slowly incorporate it into our language and into our work, right? But anyway, this is where Alex and I are curious. Do any of you have a preferred term for folks who fall under this category? And why do you prefer that term over others? And feel free to unmute or to share your answers in the chat.
If you want to share by talking, just raise your hand and I want to try to unmute you.
I think Sarah raised her hand. I don't know how to do it.
You should be able to unmute now.
Hi.
Hi.
Hello. My name is Sarah. I'm with NONCREDIT ESL at Glendale Community College. We get a very large variety of students who come from different parts of the world. And of course, English is not just their second language. We have students who speak 3, sometimes 4 languages. I personally don't use the term ESL student that often. I refer to my students as multilingual, and I tell them most of you friends, come from backgrounds where you actually had to learn more than one or two languages. So I'm really curious about this discussion. I wonder where it's headed, and if we're ever gonna adjust that acronym of English as a second language. Our students speak multiple languages even at home, and they might have more than one home language. And English definitely for them is an additional language on top of 2, 3, or sometimes 4 languages that they might already know. So for me, I think I'm very aware of that. And every time I see the term or I have used it, it made me question it. And it made me wonder, is English really this person's second language? Could it be their third or fourth language? And what's a better way to address this? But giving them credit that English is not their second language because they already know multiple languages, and I don't know languages that they do know. So yeah, I'm glad that this is a hot topic in the conversation, and I was hoping to hear about this before joining this breakout room. And Edgar is putting in the chat something. Is this for me, Edgar, or what do you think? What do you all think about EFL? Yeah, that's a good question. Okay. Yeah, I grew up in a different country. So I studied English when I was outside of the United States, and back there it was referred to EFL. To me, that made sense. If I'm a student here in this country, or if my students here are learning English as their fourth, third, or fifth language, I'm not sure how EFL would really be accurate for their situation, because they live in this country. So yeah, it's just a very interesting thing to think about and to explore, and just to raise more awareness around it, that it is not a second language for the majority of our students. And it might be an additional language, English as an additional language. So I'm glad that this is in conversation. I'm glad that you guys brought it up, and I appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your feedback, Sarah. We have some other comments on the chat. I want to ask Amelia to also unmute herself to share. But reading the chat, we have another, Alexis says the term multilingual might be preferred. Edgar mentioned EFL, English as foreign language. Amelia, can you unmute yourself now?
Can you hear me?
Yes, sorry.
All right. My comment is regarding using terms to describe English learners or English speakers. My approach is to consider it as multilingual speakers or polyglots. And I do that to highlight my students' assets and to highlight like the cultural wealth, like cultural wealth of knowledge. So just describing a student as an English, okay, I need to breathe. Describing a student as a second language learner is very limiting. And like Sarah said, most of these students speak many other languages. So it's also in my case, I was born in Mozambique, and English is my fifth language. So do I consider myself an English learner? I'm still learning English, but I do consider myself as a multilingual speaker.
Right. And sorry, I'm just going to come in really quick. I really appreciate the conversation about the asset versus deficit sort of construction of multilingual students, or however we want to refer to those who fall under this category. Because I think, yeah, there's something about the term second that makes it seem like it's secondary, right? And we associate all of these things with with that terminology. But actually, no, the students who speak another language, I feel, have more to offer than just one language. So the multi, at least for me, my preference is that it highlights the asset of that as well. Any other, Alex, you're very good.
We have a lot of great options on the chat, and I have never heard some of them, so I'm really excited to see that. So again, you can still add your feedback on the chat. We have other slides where we want to hear your participation, so that's just because of that, we're gonna move on. Towards the end of the presentation, we're gonna have more time to go back to any specific topic that we wanna explain. Is that okay?
We'll come back to you, Carol. I saw your hand.
Oh, sorry, Carol.
That's okay. Thank you. I'll wait.
Yeah. So, so with that said, like I said, we have an existing. So we started to make changes slowly into the discussions on campus. But having said that, there's still some sort of limitations that we encountered, and part of it is, time is an important thing. The adult schools really wanted us to get started right away, and then we also wanted to, we still didn't quite know exactly who we're serving because, we have some idea in terms of numbers, but it was a couple years old. But the task force decided to move forward with offering one level, one section, with the commitment to the idea that we are going to revise, collect data, and really be in contact with our students so that we can, over time, make changes as we go along. So in fall of 2021, we offered ESL 601. We have 15 students enrolled initially, and 15 of whom stayed the whole semester. By spring of 2022, we decided to offer ESL 601 again, in addition to the next level, ESL 602. 601 had a total of 12 students, and then 602 had a total of 15 students, and many of whom were students from the previous course. It is important to note that one ESL student, a 602 student who finished the first level and is now in the second level, decided to take English 101 concurrently in the same semester, and she successfully passed it, right? So this gave us a lot of information or data to really work with. Lots of things that we thought about, lots of things like, do we need to, do we need to revamp our curricula, and how so? What are some things that are important to them? In fact, through data collection and through conversations with our students, we also learned that students of a variety of needs. One that kept coming up every time is the need for computer literacy courses, because that's something that really got in the way, or something that got in the way of our trying to figure out our curricula. I saw a question in the chat. Oh, sorry. Okay. Can you hit the next button? Next, yeah. Yes, that's okay. So, but over time, we started to slowly rethink the 4 course sequence. And again, at the heart of our conversation is, we needed to think about the computer literacy as something that is a major need for a big part of our students. But we also wanted to think about, how do we help students? How do we amplify the curriculum essentially so that it honors their what they bring into the table, and that a lot of our students also have commented that many of their ESL classes were very rote and very handout based, right? They wanted they really enjoyed stuff that got them to think about their experiences, that got them to already do some critical thinking, quote unquote, because that seems to be a thing, right? That many people tend to assume that because you speak another language, you can't quite think about complex subjects, right? But the language is probably needs some development in some ways, but the thinking is already there, right? So with that said, we revised the curriculum, and we chose many of you may be familiar with QTEL or West Ed's amplified curriculum, and it's grounded on Ida Walke and George Brunch framework of the amplified curriculum. We offer challenging and nurturing learning experiences that center on, the social interactions, and the language sort of comes along with it. Of course, like many inclusive practices, we think about meeting students where they are, and building on what they know through strategic scaffolding. And the linguistic justice or diversity part here really comes when us talking about, the connection of language to identity, culture, and power. Many of our students come to these classes wanting to get rid of their accents, for example. So here, instead of just saying, yeah, let's get rid of your accent, we have a conversation about what accents mean, whose accents are valued or are quote unquote deemed sexy, and which ones are sort of looked down upon, right? We have conversations about standard English. We even talk about at some point, the terms ESL and multilinguals, and which one do they prefer and what this means to them. So as much as, we're teaching English per se, we try to really approach it from not fixing anybody, but sort of learning the opportunities and the wonderful things that come with learning another language. Are there any questions so far? Or perhaps maybe, Alex, I'm gonna go rogue a little bit. That seems to be a theme here. I wanted to ask our folks in this room, how do you imagine, a curriculum or curricula that is, honoring students' linguistic and cultural heritages? How do you, what kinds of things do you do in your classroom, or how do you hope to impart this idea that there's nothing wrong with being quote unquote ESL?
I'll chime in
Oh, perfect.
if it's okay. I taught a culture class.
Herman, you're cutting out. We're gonna allow Sarah to.
All programs to have this class, where I basically dove into like the roots of where accents come from, kind of like with a previous comment, and kind of like highlighted that there are, I guess, like successful people all over the world that have an accent. And so an accent is not, I don't know, a negative thing. It's actually a valuable thing because it makes you unique. And as like a token story, or as a side story, throughout my life, I've been told, I mean, I came here when I was 10 years old to the US to Mexico. I'm, 45 now. Just a few years ago, maybe 5, 10 years ago, someone told me that I had an accent. And I was like, what do you mean I have an accent? But apparently they heard some sort of accent in my voice. So, I think it's just, I correlate the accent to the different tones that you're like, I don't sound like my brother. My brother doesn't sound like my father. We all have our own tone, our own pitch, our own, all of that stuff. So it's just a uniqueness within all of us. So an accent is almost like it's just part of nature. I mean, it's not nothing. And so that's why I really hate accent reduction classes, because what are you trying to reduce? You're trying to reduce like my native way of talking. You're trying to like program me into some hierarchical form. And so I think having a cultural class where you truly value and talk about the different cultures and how it truly fits into our nation, especially in this pluralistic society. So, and I'll stop there.
Thank you for the feedback, Herman. Sarah, I'm trying to.
Oh.
There.
Yes, thank you. So I wanted to give an example back to the first question that Chloe brought up. How do we honor our students' heritage or their background? I give a lot of personal examples coming from learning English as an additional language in my life. So I give examples where my students can relate. And I also think, again, back to what was brought up initially about curriculum, making a lot of lessons relatable to our students and their backgrounds, things that students can see themselves in, they can add things to, and constantly being curious about where our students are coming from, getting to know them better, and adjusting our curriculum, and helping our students feel at ease and at home when they're in the classroom and the materials that are presented to them. That's a part of it. And of course, a different part of it is we also want them to be exposed to things that might be new to them, or things that they're going to encounter, and they're going to see, and they're going to learn about in their new environment. So I think it's a very skillful art of a good mixture of everything, so that they're not only being acknowledged and reinforced as far as their heritage and their background and their experiences, but at the same time, they're also being exposed to some things that are interesting and new to them, and they're going to pick them up in the environment outside of the classroom. Because as we confirmed before in the earlier discussion this morning, our students are not just living in the classroom. And, their whole identity is going to be built up and shaped up outside of the classroom. So I think it's a skill to have a mix of both, and to at the same time honoring our students and their backgrounds and where they're coming from. So I think these are all really great topics that are being discussed, and we're talking about them.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Now we're going to give the opportunity to Carolyn that we. Can you hear? Can you?
Hi. Yes. Thank you. It was just taking me a minute to unmute, and I'm sorry I'm not able to get my camera going, but can you hear me all right?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. I could just give examples of things that my colleagues have done to, leverage students' existing knowledge, and also to create, a truly multilingual environment in a course that's focused on learning English. So, for example, publishing, getting permission from students to publish their writing, whether it be 2 or 3 sentences to a story, so that students are, we have a group of colleagues who published a little journal of student writing called On Our Way. And one of the chapters was students writing a letter to a new student, like, hi, new student, and they share their own experience, so that the students are reading each other's work. And also using buddies, particularly with like online instruction, when it's hard to gauge if how much students are connecting. So using the breakout rooms for same language. So we invite Spanish speakers to breakout room 1, and the Dadi speakers and Haitian Creole. And so get together and check in with each other, and whoever can answer or explain what's going on. And then come back to the main room, because there's always different language levels in a class, right? And so sometimes there is somebody who can say, all right, we cleared up the question. So just to acknowledge that it's okay to use your first language, and it's okay to help each other with a shared native language. We have to make space for that to happen in the classroom. Like, okay, let's stop. You guys check in with each other. I don't know what you're saying, but I don't have to be in control of that, right? So I can let you use your strengths, and it's really good for community building.
Thank you, Carolyn. And I think you just summarized the heart of Amplified Curriculum and the teachings that how we're supposed to encourage and empower our students. Chloe, can you summarize this slide?
Yeah, so I guess all of what we're trying to show you is that over time we start with using language intentionally. We listen, and we try to also revise curricula, and we thought, it might be a good idea to also really have what we're trying to accomplish in writing in some, public space like a website, so that it will help remind us, and will also help share what we're trying to do and raise awareness about linguistic justice and linguistic diversity. So we decided to write, a few colleagues and I decided to write a program or a vision statement that kind of writes down our hopes and our dreams and our intentions for the program. And here we're not going to read it to you, but here we hope that you can see that we want to celebrate cultural and linguistic diversity. That we look at students holistically, and we want to help them not just in their school, not just in the classroom, but in other areas as well. That we hope to promote that our work doesn't just end in the classroom, that it extends in the larger campus, and hopefully eventually in our communities and all of that other stuff. The other thing that I also wanted us to really focus on is that we want to really collect data. We want to be current, and we want to really connect with others like those and learn that so that we can learn from many of you and your expertise, and hear your own experiences at your own institutions. Alex, do you want to add anything else about this?
And I think this is a perfect transition to our next couple of topics. And we're going to encourage your participation there too. Because remember, when we redefine success, one size does not fit all. We can also express this as one goal does not fit all, right? So let's just, before we even touch on this topic, I want to hear from you some ideas of why a multilingual student might be interested in taking a class with you, or at your school, at your college. It doesn't have to be like a out of the ordinary. Just a reason why do you think someone might want to work on their language? You can type it, or you can.
Here, it's okay. I had can everybody hear me?
Yes.
I had a student. The question is, why would somebody want to work on their language? I had a student come into what we call our learning center here on campus, and to be honest, he really is not an English learner. He was born here and everything, but he told me he wanted to work because he eventually wanted to take a credit class. So it just like kind of surprised me that would come into our doors, ESL, quote unquote, ESL Learning Center, to improve their English. So, and he had shared some other improve his English with revolved around dating or whatever. But anyway, so I guess it could be such a variety of reasons that I had not anticipated someone born here, raised here, went to school here, would want to come into our learning center. I mean, the English department itself had a tutoring center, but that didn't fit his needs. He just wanted to work on basic English. So asked that if we're open-minded to all of that, it will help maybe draw more people in.
Thank you for the feedback, and I love it because I see a lot of different answers, participations in the chat to gain more confidence, to get a better job, improve their job, survival English, confidence, job advancement. So we cannot break it into 3 different points, but as you can see, there's multiple, right? They might have an academic goal, they might have a professional goal, they might have a personal goal. Some students, they just want to work towards a college degree, or maybe a certificate, or maybe they weren't able to finish their studies in their native country, and they come here with the idea of finishing them, or revalidating them. Professionally, like find a better job, a new job. We, Chloe and I, we talk to our students, and a lot of them, they want to open their own businesses. We also have some personal goals. Students who maybe they are retirees. They have grandkids. They just want to get the English, improve their English to communicate better with their grandkids, right? So there's plenty of reasons for students to take this class. So I think it's unfair for institutions to measure success in only one way.
And I think this is where I come in. I think we typically measure success at our institutions by way of how many matriculate into credit-bearing courses, how many transfer into a four-year university, how many earn degrees. But after our, after getting to know our students, we learned that success for them means very differently, right? So, for example, one student, Abi, is retired and is right now not only taking English to help the course, not just to develop his English, but by way of taking the ESLN courses, he's now learning how to work in a computer or work a computer, right? He's also meeting new friends and getting some time for himself. And this is very important because Abi is actually the main caregiver of his very ill wife, right? And his doctor asked him that he needed to do something for himself. And the ESLN courses is, a way for him to do things for Abi and not just care for his wife, right? And then we also have Alicia, for example, who took 3 levels of ESL and she spent most of her life cleaning houses for a living, but now that she feels confident, she decided to apply to become a caregiver and is now considering to get a CNA certificate. Sorry, I misspelled that. So, I think one of the challenges that we're experiencing is that, how do we make our institution and others understand that success can also mean different things for different people. It's not just in the numbers, but also in the way that we really serve and help our students meet their own personal and diverse goals, right?
Yeah, and sorry, Chloe, I think it was auto-corrected that changes from CNA to K.
I did.
I hope you get it. You get it. Just to add on this, keep in mind that as long as you work with a multilingual student, ESL, whatever the terminology is, you are more than an instructor. You are like an ally, like a friend, like a colleague, right? Like we are all counselors, and many times we became their counselors. So that's why, for us in the field, we understand the needs and the different goals that our students have.
Yeah. Go ahead, Alex. Sorry.
Okay, now that we talk about goals and refining success, we also have to have a serious conversation about the challenges that offering programs like this present. Chloe and I, we were considering ways to present this topic, and again, we decided to break it into 3 different parts. We're going to start with the challenges that some students might have. So, do you mind sharing what are some challenges that multilingual students face when transitioning to higher education? And again, you can use the chat, or we can take some comments.
I'll chime in again.
Okay.
Just because I had a colleague at another institution I know who, I guess over the course of a couple years, was able to transition about 15 to 20 ESL students into actual credit-bearing courses. And she was trying to talk to us about what did she actually do to help them transition. And I think one of the biggest challenges is just what you don't know is what you don't know. The credit side of life is different than the non-credit side of life, where they can become involved in student activities and just learning all about the whole range of what a student life is. And I think that's maybe one challenge. What you don't know is what you don't know. So maybe like a fear, and you don't want to get into a place where you feel uncomfortable, or whatever. But her approach was literally guide them step by step, introduce them to classes, visit classes, attend like student performances with them, attend like student gatherings with them, to show them that this is what credit side is like. And so I think in a short, that's maybe one challenge, like just fear of being placed in a situation where you're uncomfortable, and when there's a vulnerable population. So when you say that kind of thing, it's easy for us maybe to say, oh, step out of your comfort zone or whatever, but for them, they may have trauma, they may have so many experiences behind them already that it's hard for them to just be open and and not knowing that they will be accepted, because still in a lot of places, you know, I guess the feeling is that perhaps they may be accepted, but they're not necessarily included. And so anyway, that's kind of my take.
Muchas gracias, Herman. And yes, I can see a lot of comments. Like, I like the very first one on challenges that says collecting data. We're going to touch on that later on because a lot of places have the same problem, right? They don't have the knowledge on the system and how to reach out. Fear of making mistakes. The campus feels big. So again, we try to summarize some objectives and maybe expand on them. As you can see, many of you touch on these topics on the chat without even looking at the presentation ahead, right? So it's the norm that students will have these challenges. The work is on how we can help them remove them or overcoming them, right? Student retention. How many of you have that experience, right? Like a lot of students say, I'm gonna take the class, I'm gonna start the class, but maybe a week before the class starts, something happened. They might get a job and they have scheduling conflicts, right? They don't know how to navigate college. It's one thing to go to an adult school and enroll into their programs, but going to a big college, trying to find the admissions office, trying to find a counselor to help them guide, it's intimidating. There are different expectations at the community college level. At least in our case, we can see many of our students are so used to the environment in adult ed that it's a drastic change when they start classes with us. Now they have to use Canvas, or I don't know if some of your schools use Blackboard still, but it's a new software that they have not experienced before. They have to know how to use their email to communicate with the instructors. And I think most of us multilingual students, we suffer from the imposter syndrome. We don't believe that we're not that we're enough for the college, when in reality we are maybe more prepared than what we thought. Armando, can you unmute yourself?
Hi. So I just wanted to ask, well, I wanted to make a statement and then ask a question. So I worked as an English language tutor for a bit at different colleges, and one of the things that I noticed from the students that I was working with is there wasn't really an understanding of English language, like the history of the English language and phonology. So one lady who was just a native Spanish speaker, she thought that because the writing system was the same, that she should be able to understand it. Once I explained to her that in Spanish, you know, there's like 5 to 8 different vowel sounds, while English has the same vowels and diphthongs, but they have over 18 vowel sounds. And that they can change, and then she was like, well, why is this? Why is that? And I told her, you know, language contact, and I talked a little bit about why some of the sounds are sound like a je instead of how they should be sound because of the influence of French. And then after that conversation, she was actually able to have more patience with herself. She was able to understand that, yes, this is a completely different language. Yes, there's completely different sounds that I have to learn. So one of the things I wanted to ask from the group, if anyone in their language programs has tried to do an initial like history of the English language and cover some phonology so that students have a better understanding of what type of challenges they'll face, just so that they could have more patience, you know, and more understanding for themselves.
Maybe that can be like inspiration, right? For them.
Nobody else is going to chime in. I'll chime in a little bit.
Sarah.
Well, just very brief. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, so I just wanted to add one thing that we just recently started doing in the college prep program at GCC for non-credit ESL students is that we're getting help from former students who speak other languages to tutor our students in their first language. So let's say if our students' first language is Spanish, so we have a former college prep students who's already graduated the program and their first language is Spanish. So they've been training them or tutoring them with their writing and with their grammar in their first language. And I was there a few days ago as this was happening, and I noticed that the students are, of course, much at ease. They're learning, they're asking questions in their first language, and the grammar is explained to them in their first language. So that can be something that could be implemented to take away one of the challenges that some of our students might be facing, which would be, tell me this in my first language. How do I explain this? How do you explain the grammar here? So that's been helpful.
Edgar, can you unmute yourself?
Yes, so I'm in the main room here as well. And I just wanted to address Armando's questions. I have noticed that there is this like need for the why in what we do in the English language learner classroom. And, you know, along with like this idea of andragogy as opposed to pedagogy and working with adults. And adults do require reason in what they're learning. And I think it's important to kind of take the time and do provide them with some explanation as to why things are the way they are. As you know, you're not going to get into a full-on linguistics class, but to kind of cover it on like a surface level and to put the students at ease really goes a long way in kind of building this desire to continue learning English rather than being forced to learn English. And then in regards to phonology and pronunciation, so I've been teaching the literacy classroom for 3 or 4 semesters now. And as I've been trying to refine my own curriculum and kind of figuring out what works best for students and kind of helping them really progress in such a short amount of time, I have started spending more time in the beginning of the semester focusing on pronunciation and and not that I'm kind of pushing like this prescriptive kind of English pronunciation on the students. I'm totally for having your own dialect and your accent and kind of embracing that, but more so in kind of just getting their muscles and the anatomy of the English language, kind of familiarizing them with that and working on that aspect of the language and getting their jaw moving in a way, because some languages you don't even move your mouth. You know, the English language is very and like energetic, kind of a lot of movements, very high kind of. So I have been working on that, and I've noticed a big difference in the outcome. 3-4 weeks into the semester, after focusing on pronunciation for like, let's say 20-30 minutes a day, for a warm up or whatever. So it is, I totally agree with what Armando was saying.
Thank you so much.
I think this is, yeah, thank you. So we also are experiencing, who have experienced some, faculty and staff challenges. Being a new program, I think right now it's only me overseeing the whole program, and it's I can only do so much on the faculty end, at least, right? And then I'm gonna, just in the interest of time, I want to talk about the other piece that speaks to the L.E.A.R.N conference. I think just sort of growing or raising awareness about this idea of linguistic diversity and justice is also goes hand in hand with what we're trying to accomplish, right? So we constantly need to do professional development, not just for the growing number of instructors that who are teaching in the program. We need to also really think about even once students matriculate into English 101, are current English instructors aware or have some sort of or open to this idea of that it's not just constantly about correction when it comes to teaching English, and there's other things that that come into play. And then also, of course, the larger campus and the surrounding community as a whole. I think like many of our work, especially in English studies, our work, it goes outside of the classroom. And I think that's the hardest part, I think, that that we're experiencing. You know, how do we get folks to reimagine what English studies is, and how can we better support and how I can't English anymore today, and how we can help students or support students in this way. I know I'm like, my brain is doesn't want to English anymore.
So, Glady, you want me to talk about the institutional
Yes,
structure?
please. Yeah.
So, as a new program, in the beginning, we had a little of an issue with outreach and recruitment. Again, it's intimidating for students to venture into the college or university campus, right? It's something new for them. But at the same time, being news to the community, we had to build that trust, not just with the community members, but with the local adults. A lot of times, there's a lot of fear that a new program is gonna take away students from a currently existing program, right? And also, we didn't have any referrals. And you know that the most powerful tool for outreach in our community is the word of mouth, right? We're getting there, but we're not quite there yet. We are fortunate, thanks to Chloe, we are recognized as an official multilingual program on our college website. We have a landing page with all the information that students need. We do have, as you saw before, a mission statement. We have a lot of support from key administrators and faculty. We are extremely grateful with them because they allow classes to fly with few students that otherwise wouldn't be possible. And that helps build the program. We also have the library and tutoring center supporting us. A lot of the participants in the task force are housed into different areas on campus that are always welcome to our students. The multilingual department does not have an allocated spot on campus. My dream, and I think Chloe shares this with me, is to make this program a program similar to maybe EOPS, where they have a hub for students where they can go for guidance, support, just to feel safe. There's a need to educate our colleagues and the different departments about our program and why our program is different than maybe the program at the local adult school, right? And Chloe, do you want to touch on the linguistic diversity, awareness, and justice?
Oh, I think I touched on that in the previous slide too. Yeah. So yeah. Sorry. Yeah.
Because I prefer to have a better conversation, I'm just gonna show you briefly this. This is the result for the first couple of semesters that we offer these programs. Our research team has been great in compiling information, and based on that information, we know a little bit more about our student demographic, completion rates, and success rate into credit courses. We can use this information to advocate for resources, to know whether or not most of our students identify as female, Hispanic, and between this age range. What can we do to reach males that might not be as interested in participating in the program? Is it because of the schedule? Is it because of the offerings, right? So having the research team as part of involved with us has been really helpful to demonstrate the success of our program. Here, I just want to touch on how our program has strengthened the partnership with adult education. I mentioned before, sometimes when they hear the college is offering an ESL class, those schools are worried that we're going to be taking their students. But the reality is, once the students transition to our school, they motivate the students at the local adult school to finish their program. And if they already have a high school diploma, they can transfer to us to continue improving the language. Some students, they keep enroll in the high school diploma or GED preparation program, and they also take our ESL class because there's no competition. We're here to support and help them any way we want. We're not gonna make you read these testimonials, but when Chloe was working on the website, we had the idea to post some student testimonials on our landing page. I don't know if you want to say anything about the students, Chloe.
Yeah, so Darlene is a very special, well, they're all very special students, right? But Darlene is especially interesting story because she wanted to take ESL and because she wanted to be able to help her son with his homework. But you know, after she was the student who ended up taking English 101 concurrently with 602, and now she is, I think, getting ready to transfer to Cal State San Bernardino, is gonna receive her associate's degree by the end of this semester, and has just really soared as a student and grown as a student. So I'm really thankful to have met her because I think she's running this class was so scary because we never know what's going to happen, but we were seeing some successes in our students.
Do
you think we have time to do this?
How about we jump into the last slide and I can copy the link into the chat. We do have kind of like a student panel. We did it this week. So if you want to see the interaction that we have with the students and what they have to think about the program, I can put the link on the chat and you can watch it. But let's just jump into the goals and then I'm gonna type it on the chat. Okay.
Thank you, Alex.
Chloe, I'm gonna do the first two and you do the last two.
Sure.
So different pathways. Our goal is to better serve our students. Right now, we focus on the transition from non-credit to credit. But maybe in the future, with partnership with other departments, maybe we can build a transition pathway into the business area, maybe into the allied health area, just to accommodate those students who want to explore those majors. Better support services. Again, our goal is to have a well-established department, a hub for our students where they can get all of the assistance and resources since day one. They don't have to worry about getting lost in the college or not knowing who to talk.
I think Ellen has mentioned some of our challenges, I think, or share some of our challenges. We hope to include more sections at different times. Right now, a majority of our classes are in the evenings, and most of them are in, or all of them are in person, but we're gonna begin to offer a hybrid version in the summer. But I think, again, especially for this conference, we don't want to just our goal is to also, in some ways, if I can dream big, is to change the way people view and see language as a whole, right? So how do we continue? I call it maybe professional development or education or advocacy for linguistic diversity and justice. And then, it removes stereotypes and really show students that speaking another language doesn't mean that you're less than, that you have a lot to offer, right? So I think that's I hope we can all dream big and get to this hope and to dream someday. Yeah, your turn, Alex.
So I'm gonna stop sharing my screen. Feel free to end this session with conversations going back to previous topics that maybe we didn't allow you to share as much as you wanted. I'm gonna type the link to the student panel on the chat if you want to explore.
I do want to come back to this idea of the terminology. I know that Aida Walke and George Bunch, the scholars whose framework we're using for the program, prefers English language learners because it highlights the learning part. So I know that that's something that they talk quite a bit about. So I don't know what y'all think about terminology. Or any other topics.
I put the link on the chat for the video. Can someone just click to let me know if it's working?
Yeah, I think Caroline has her hand up too.
Okay.
Oh yes, thank you. On the topic of terminology. I work in a large program that we continue to call ourselves an ESL program. And in our leadership team, we started a conversation about, the deficit minded, image behind that acronym. And one of my coworkers said, well, are we changing this? Is the impetus behind the change coming from faculty, or is it coming from students? Are students asking for this? And that coworker's concern was creating a lot of confusion because that like ESL is like everywhere on everything, and changing and renaming the program to an unfamiliar acronym for reasons that the students didn't request, she thought was a little bit opposite of the intention. So anyway, it was an interesting debate, and I was just curious to hear if anybody else in the room had experience where students are saying, we don't like this label and we wish the school would change it.
I mean, I'll chime in. I don't have any experience with students actually asking for it, but I took a training recently where they strongly encourage student input into, I guess, any departmental or programmatic change. And so I think that training strongly encouraged to don't leave them out of these decision-making processes. Bring them to the table, bring students who are willing to discuss this to the table, and then we can actually glean what they need. Because I think it's still, everything's happening like we just spoke from the faculty end. Like we think it's necessary for funding many times. But yeah, I think bring them to the table, and I think that'll be a good step forward in making more progress.
Okay. And my friends, I don't want to be rude, but I want to be mindful of your time. I know that some of you might be in the same room and you might need to go out and eat. So personally, I want to say thank you for dedicating this time. This is something that is important to all of us. Otherwise, we wouldn't be here. Feel free to send us an email or continue this conversation. And yeah, thank you.